हिमालय का चोटी में क्या है, आप यहीं पर, आपको नहीं करना पड़ेगा, आप घर में बैठ के जान जाओगे। चांद क्या है, सौर जगत में क्या है, आप यहीं पर बैठ के जान पाओगे। मोबाइल आपको कुछ खबर देगा लेकिन पुस्तक नहीं देगा। मोबाइल थोड़ा कम पढ़ो, पुस्तक थोड़ा ज्यादा पढ़ो। सही बात कि नहीं? सही बात कि नहीं? है? मेरा भाषण लंबा होते जा रहा क्या? हाँ, थोड़ा लंबा होते जा रहा, तो मैं रुक जाऊंगा आखिरी बात बोल के। जिन बात बुलाने के लिए हमको यहाँ बुलाया गया, तो एक शब्द हमें मिला था, जिजीविषा। आप सब जानते हो जिजीविषा शब्द का अर्थ क्या है? जानते हो? सामने जो बैठे हैं इन लोग जानते हैं, अब पीछे बच्चे लोग आपसे पूछ रहे हैं, आप लोग जानते हो कोई जिजीविषा का अर्थ क्या होता है? नहीं जानते हो। हम भी नहीं जानते थे, जिजीविषा का अर्थ हमें भी मालूम नहीं था। तो जिसको तिसको मिलते थे हम उनसे पूछते थे। तो एक कॉलेज, शनिवार का दिन था, छुट्टी हुआ। उस समय 2 दिन छुट्टी नहीं मिलता था, शनिवार भी क्लास लेना पड़ता था। छुट्टी हुआ, 2 बजे का टाइम, जून का महीना। हमारी रिक्शा में इन्हीं के जैसे एक बुजुर्ग महिलाएं, प्राध्यापिका हमारे रिक्शा में आके बैठे। हमको लगा कि इनसे पूछने से ये सवाल का जवाब मिल जाएगा। तो हम उनसे पूछा कि जिजीविषा का अर्थ क्या है? उन्होंने कहा जीने की तमन्ना, जीने की इच्छा, ये है उस शब्द। तो फिर हमें पूछे कि तुमको इन शब्द मिला कहाँ से? हमने कहा पुस्तक में से। बोले तुम्हारे पढ़ाई लिखाई कितना दूर? हमने कहा कभी कोई स्कूल तो हम गए नहीं। बोले तुम कैसे पढ़ लेते हो? हाँ, बोलो आपने ही सीखा, जिल वाली बात नहीं बताए। तब उन्होंने कहा कि हमारे एक पत्रिका निकलता है वर्तिका, उसमें तुम्हारे जैसे लोग, कम लिखे पढ़े लोग लिखते हैं, तुम लिखोगे? हमने कहा ठीक है, प्रयास करूंगा, अगर लिख पाते हैं तो फिर मैं आपको दे आऊंगा, आपका एड्रेस दीजिए। तो छोटा सा कागज का कुटका में अपने उनके पास कार्ड नहीं था, कार्ड नहीं रखते थे, छोटा सा कुटका में अपना नाम लिख के दिया। तो हमने देखा ये है महाश्वेता देवी। जानते हो आप लोग महाश्वेता देवी के नाम? हाँ, अगर क्रांतिकारी लेखक बोला जाए, साहित्यिक, तो बंगाल में वही एक ही हुए थे। कालिदास की कहानी देवी सरस्वती से हो गया था, अब अनपढ़ का पढ़ी बन गए थे। तो एक अनपढ़ रिक्शा के साथ महाश्वेता देवी का साथ मुलाकात हुआ, मेरे साथ मुलाकात हुआ, उनके पैर पर गिरे। और उस समय हमारे रिक्शा में उनका ही एक पुस्तक था, अग्निगर्भ, उस पुस्तक का नाम, आग उगालने वाले, आग धारण करने वाले, अग्निगर्भ, उस पुस्तक का नाम। तो वो लेख जब छप गया वर्तिका में, तो बंगाल में छा गए। वर्तिका पत्रिका बहुत फेमस थे। अब उसमें एक ऐसे व्यक्ति ने लिखा जो कभी स्कूल नहीं गया, ये लोगों की हजम नहीं हो रहा था ये बात। उन लेख को पढ़ने के बाद विश्वास नहीं कर रहा था कि ऐसे लिखा जो कभी स्कूल ही नहीं गया। तो लोग, हम जादवपुर यूनिवर्सिटी के पास जादवपुर स्टेशन में रहा करते थे, तो लोग हमसे मिलने चले आते थे, प्राध्यापक लोग भी, छात्राएं भी, और वो लोग आके हमसे बोलते थे ठीक है, पत्रिका के लिए तुमने एक लेख लिखा, हमारे पत्रिका के लिए भी एक लेख लिखो। क्या परीक्षा लेते थे या कुछ हमें पता नहीं, लेकिन फिर हम लिखते थे, पत्रिका में छपते गया, छपते 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 यहाँ तक हम आ पहुँचे 26 पुस्तक। इन दादाजी के चलते हमारे रूसो फेलोशिप भी मिले, वो बैठे हैं सामने हमारे। तो बहुत सारे पुरस्कार भी मिले। आप उड़ीसा में भी हम आए, ये भी हमारे लिए बहुत बड़े पुरस्कार। आगे भी कई बार आए अलग अलग जगह में, उड़ीसा में भी हमारे पुस्तक का ट्रांसलेट हुआ उड़िया भाषा में, 2 पुस्तक, एक बातासे बारोदेर गंध, इतिवृत्ते चांडाल जीवन। उन प्रदीप राय भी अभी इसी प्रोग्राम में आए हुए हैं। तो मैं थोड़ा लंबा बोल दिया। अगर इसमें से आप लोग कोई कुछ सीख पाया हो तो मैं अपने को इतना जो बका मैंने इतना दूर से जो आया इसको मैं सार्थक मानूंगा, धन्य मानूंगा। हार मत मान लेना, आपको कोई नहीं हरा सकता। खुद से लड़के अगर आप जीत जाओ तो आप पहले खुद से लड़ो। आप कहां पहुंचना चाहते हो उस दिशा पहले तय करो। जरूरी नहीं कि आप राइटर बनोगे, आप डॉक्टर बन सकते हो, इंजीनियर बन सकते हो, बन सकते हो, जो और उस तरफ निकल पड़ो। बाबा साहेब ने कहा कि दौड़ो, जहां तुम पहुंचना चाहते हो उस दिशा में, वहां तक के लिए तुम दौड़ो। अगर दौड़ चलते चल नहीं सकते हो तो हम हिंदी में क्या बोलते हैं, रेंगते हुए कछुआ के तरह चलो, लेकिन रुको नहीं, चलते जाओ तो तुम मंजिल पा जाओगे। सबको नमस्ते, सबको दुआ सलाम, सबको प्रेम भरा भालोबासा आशीर्वाद।
Thank you, Vyapari ji. You have beautifully narrated about the contents of your and the way you have lived your life. Really, I find this autobiography so much fascinating in the way that my personal experiences I have compiled one in Odia, one compilation that is in which many people have their jail life and okay. So thank you, sir, again. Now I request renowned short story writer, journalist. He has written his autobiography. He was a government servant also. But interestingly, we will know since it is called a confession, how much elements confession he has made it and how much he has concealed it. Very honest. So let us hear it from you about your understanding of the world, your lived experience, and understanding of the world of bureaucracy at the test of the time. Okay.
Thank you. My autobiography in Odia is Anishoka Prasak. In English, it is a reluctant bureaucrat. I have written both. The Odia book was published in 2021, and the English version that was published in 2022. So before I begin, I would like to quote one E.H. Carr, that he says that before you read a book, read the author. And before you read the author, you read the society that has brought him up. So naturally, whenever a person looks at the things, he is a product of the society, and he is the product, and also his upbringing also made of his mindset. So naturally, whenever I am writing from my perspective. So naturally, there will be a personal element in these things. One cannot be, as he has first asked the question, one cannot be fully detached. Fully with detachment, one cannot write. Whatever I have written, it is with own personal feelings are there, and moreover, I have seen the things. That is from my perspective. So there is some personal element in the books. So the second, so especially when my autobiography is limited to my experience in the government service. I have not written anything about me. I have not written about my birth, my father, my parents, and nothing, my education, nothing is there. My autobiography begins from the day I joined the government service, and it ends when I retired from the service. That is the period only. The day I joined and the day I retired, in between that my experience is my autobiography. So the government thinks that is, I just want to quote one senior officer who has told me once, what is a government? Government is not the secretariat building. Government is also not the cabinet minister. So whatever we might have read in the constitution, whatever we have also read in our college days, that this is not the kind of thing that is not, it is not the government, is not the government, not the building, or not is the cabinet ministers even. Actually, the government is run by the bureaucracy. And that is the first, and that is the hard, and whoever is here in the government, so they maybe, I think that they will agree with me. Whatever the decision is taken, that is taken by the bureaucrats, that is the person. So my senior used to teach me that what is government? Government is that you, I, or secretary, Tripathi or the deputy secretary, some Parija, whatever decision is taken, that is the government decision. So it is about the people. Another aspect is that I would like to say that actually whatever autobiography written, it is said that it is naturally the autobiographer, he tends to glorify himself. He does not write his weaknesses. Okay. Suppose a prime minister or president is writing persons in the public service or in the public position, they tend not to write anything of their, which will be critical of them, their weaknesses or their failings. They don't write that. They always try to glorify that because they think always that if we write something which will go, my weaknesses, that may affect me, electorate, in case of a politician or whatever. But in case of persons like Saran Kumarji or others, they don't have anything loose. So whatever I have written my autobiography, I have just with a distressed mind, I have written about how the government functions, how the decisions are taken, and how the policies are made. You might have seen that the Prime Minister is reading something or a Chief Minister reading something. And you are saying that the Prime Minister says so, but it is written by a bureaucrat. Suppose a policy is taken and we say that the government has taken this, but that is also written, that is also decided in a meeting and which is also dominated by the bureaucrats even. So whatever I have written in my autobiography, my experience, the autobiography, what I have seen and how the decisions are taken. And another aspect is that in the government organization, there is one kind of software that develops. And they do not allow others to enter into that area, that arena. So in my autobiography, I have written about the government, about the decisions taken, and moreover, I have come from a middle class, lower middle class family. I joined as an OFS officer. I was associated in the implementation of VAT and then GST in Odisha. I was a member of the drafting committee, GST law drafting committee, and whatever the laws made, that is also made by us only. It was approved by the government. So all these things are written, and I think that it will interest the persons, other persons who want to know about the government functioning, the policies made, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I would ask Sri Manavi Bandyopadhyay. She is there. She is quite famous in All India IA. So, autobiography is also an understanding and analysis of the time you live in. We live in a very stratified society. Discriminations are there on the basis of caste, religion, and even on gender, in which these are the realities in which we live. So, how you have understood and position yourself in this?
Jai Jagannath. Jai Jagannath. আমি আজকে বাংলায় বলবো জগন্নাথ সুভদ্রা বলরাম অসম্পূর্ণ শরীর অসম্পূর্ণ লিঙ্গ আমিও অসম্পূর্ণ লিঙ্গ নিয়ে আমার জন্ম কোলিঙ্গ वो सबसे पूछते हैं हम क्यों जो तुम्हारा कौन लिंगो तुम्हारा इसलिए तो अभी तो मैं पहुंच गया कलिंगो में আমি তো পৌঁছে গেছি কলিঙ্গে সুতরাং লিঙ্গ নিয়ে যা কিছু বিভ্রান্তি এখানেই তার সমাপ্তি হওয়া উচিত আমার জীবন পাত্র উছলিয়া মাধুরী করেছো দান তুমি জানো নাই, তুমি জানো নাই, তুমি জানো নাই। আমার জীবন ও পাত্র উচ্ছলিয়া মাধুরী করেছ দান, রবীন্দ্রনাথের গান। আমার জীবন সত্যিই কিন্তু আমাকে মাধুরী দান করেছে। ও প্রভাত বাবু, আপ তো চলা গয়া। কেন মোর গানের ভেলায় এলে না প্রভাত বেলায়, হলে না সাথের সাথী জীবনের শেষের বেলায়। প্রভাত বাবু আমার কথাগুলোকে ওড়িয়াতে ট্রান্সলেট, আপনি ঘুরে আসুন, আমি বলতে থাকি, আপনি ট্রান্সলেট করবেন। আসলে এই বাথরুম যাওয়াটা একটা এত সংক্রামক ব্যাধি, আমরা সকলেই একসাথে পরপর চলতে গেলাম। তা এটা আমার আত্মজীবনী। একটু আগে মনোরঞ্জন স্যার বলছিলেন যে পূর্ব পাকিস্তান, ভারতবর্ষ, পাকিস্তান, বাংলাদেশ, ভারতবর্ষ, দলিতদের কিন্তু একটা ভৌগোলিক অবস্থান আছে, তাদের কিন্তু একটা জায়গা আছে। আমাদের কিন্তু কোনো ভৌগোলিক অবস্থানই নেই, আমরা দলিত নই, আমরা পদদলিত। আমি মনে করি আমরা যারা ট্রান্সজেন্ডার আমরা কিন্তু পদদলিত। পদদলিত মানে ও প্যার সে দলতে হ্যায় যোগ, পা দিয়ে যাকে দলা হয় সেই হচ্ছে পদদলিত। তা আমাদের এই প্রথম, আমি একজন যে ভারতবর্ষের প্রথম ট্রান্সজেন্ডার পড়াশুনো শিখে প্রিন্সিপাল হয়েছি। অফিসিয়ালি আমি প্রিন্সিপাল, কিন্তু প্রতি মুহূর্তে আমি মনোরঞ্জন স্যারকে বলছিলাম, উনি আমাদের ওখানকার বিধায়ক, আমাকে কিন্তু কোথাও টিকতে দেওয়া হয় না। আমি আত্মজীবনী লিখব কি না, আসলে আত্মজীবনী আমার যেটা মনে হয়েছে এটা একটা স্বগতোক্তি। আমি যখন আমার সঙ্গে কথা বলি তখন কিন্তু সেখানটাই শুরু হয় আত্মজীবনী। আমি কখনো মনে করি না কি আমার আত্মজীবনী অন্য কেউ পড়বে, কেন আমাকে তো সম্মানই দেওয়া হয় না, আমার জীবনের তো কোনো মূল্যই নেই। আমি যখন সামাজিক স্বীকৃতি পাই না তখন আমার আত্মজীবনী কে পড়বে? পড়বে আত্মজীবনী কে পড়বে না, যে আমাকে ঘৃণা করে দূরে সরিয়ে রাখবে, সে আবার খুব সাবধানে সন্তর্পণে দেখবে আমি কেমন আছি, আমি কেমন থাকতে পারি। অর্থাৎ আমাকে নিষ্ঠুরভাবে যন্ত্রণা দিয়ে যে স্যাডিস্টরা আনন্দ পায়, তারা আবার পর্যবেক্ষণ করে যে আমি কি বলতে চাইছি। আমি তো সবসময় বলি যে, যেটা বলছিলেন আমাদের মনোরঞ্জন স্যার, যে আমাদের থার্ড আই আছে, তা আমরা তো তৃতীয় লিঙ্গ, সুতরাং আমাদের থার্ড আই তো আরও বেশি করে থাকবে। এ কারণে আমি চাই আমরা যারা দলিত, যারা পদদলিত, যারা প্রান্তিক, যারা মার্জিনালাইজড, যারা উঠে আসতে চাই পথের নাটকের মতন, তাদের ভীষণভাবে ইন্টারাকশন করা উচিত তোমাদের সাথে, ছাত্রছাত্রীদের সাথে। আমি চাইবো ওই যে ইয়েটা আছে, স্পিকারটা তোমাদেরকে দেওয়া হোক, তোমরা আমাকে প্রশ্ন করো, এখানেই নতুন করে একটা বেদের মতো শ্রুতি আত্মজীবনী তৈরি হয়ে যাক। অনেক ছাত্রছাত্রী আমার সাথে ছবি তুলেছো, কালকে আমার অনুষ্ঠান দেখে আমাকে ভালো লেগেছে, আমার সমস্ত অনুষ্ঠান দেখো তোমরা, আমার সাথে ইন্টারাকশন করলে আমার ভালো লাগবে। একটু কেউ সাহায্য করুন ওনাদের, তোমরা একটা একটা করে আমায় কোয়েশ্চেন করো আমাদের জীবন নিয়ে, আমি তোমাদের বলতে চাই সে কথাগুলো। কর্ডলেস কাছে হাত তোলো, কে কথা বলবে, প্রথম প্রশ্ন করবে? আমি তোমাদের সাথে বলতে চাই, কেন আমরা যারা এখানে বসে আছি, আমাদের হরিদিন তো গেল, সন্ধ্যা হলো, পার করো আমারে।
आप एक ट्रांसजेंडर महिला है, आपके लिए विवाह के क्या मायने हैं, और सिंदूर आपने लगाया है तो क्या आप वैवाहिक हैं? ये बताइएगा, आपने सिंदूर लगाया किसके नाम का है, और एक ट्रांसजेंडर की लाइफ में विवाह कितना चैलेंजिंग होता है? क्या वो स्वीकृति मिलती है पत्नी का दर्जा?
पहले प्रेम तो बहुत चैलेंजिंग होता है, प्रेम के बाद तो विवाह हो। हमारे तो पहले प्रेम पिछले विवाह हो, और इंसान का क्या होता है, पहले विवाह हो पिछले प्रेम। तो ये हमारा सिंबलाइज्ड है सिंदूर। सिंदूर बहुत पसंद करते हैं हम लोग, ये शाखा भी बहुत पसंद करते हैं, क्योंकि हम लोग खुद समझते हैं जब हम लोग माँ दुर्गा है, तो हमारा पोती है कि नहीं है ये अच्छी नहीं, ये कोई बात नहीं। सिंदूर तो है, सिंदूर है माने हमारा आधार कार्ड तो है। हमारा आधार कार्ड कौन सा है? आधार कार्ड है, आधार, डक कार्ड। तो ऐसे ही है कि सिंदूर ऐसे ही है, बहुत पोती है हमारे पास। तो तुम्हारे पास देखिए ना कितना सारे लोग बैठते हैं, इतना सूरत लड़की है तुम, आते हैं कि प्लास्टिक का फूल है ना हमारा माथा पे, हम लोग को प्लास्टिक है। हम लोग ऐसे होते हैं कि अभी अभी इधर आते हैं आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंसी। आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंसी में क्या, पहले पहले इसे बोलते आप लोग तो आर्टिफिशियल लेडी है, अभी आर्टिफिशियल क्या शोर मचाए दिया ना। तो हम लोग कैसे, हम लोग ऑटो है, हम लोग फीसी भी है, दोनों भी है।
Anybody who wants to ask any question from among the students, please, if you have any
এটাকে
question.
কোশ্চেন মনে করো না, এটা মনে করো তোমাদের সঙ্গে আমার সেতু বন্ধন।
না আপনার
একটা
একটা পার্সোনাল এক্সপেরিয়েন্স।
হ্যাঁ বলুন।
ম্যাম আমার একটা প্রশ্ন আছে,
বলুন।
আমার একটা প্রশ্ন আছে।
পিছনে ব্যাপারজি বলছেন।
আমার প্রশ্ন
ও,
আছে।
আচ্ছা, বলুন। আউট অফ টাইম, এখানেও সীমাবদ্ধ, লিমিটেশন।
ने, हम दलित हैं, जितने दलित हम दलन के शिकार है, लेकिन हम में भी कास्ट से ऊपर चल के फिर क्लास आ गया है।
क्लास भी आ गया, क्लास आएगा तो क्लैश भी आ जाएगा।
कास्ट के अंदर क्लास भी, कुछ अमीर बन गया, जो दलित होते हुए अमीर बनने के बाद अपने को दलित नहीं बोलता है, और दलितों के ऊपर में भी वो वही अत्याचार करते हैं जो मनुवादी लोग करते हैं। आपसे मेरा सवाल है, आपके जो ट्रांसजेंडर के अंदर ये जात पात है क्या, या अमीरी गरीबी ये भेदभाव है क्या?
जात तो है, पहले तो मैं ब्राह्मीण है, मेरा टाइटल है ब्रह्मोपाध्याय। अभी 1 महीना तक जब मैं 6 ईयर्स में सर्जरी किया, वो ब्राह्मण से 1 मिनट से मैं दलित नहीं प्रांतिक बन गया, मार्जिनलाइज बन गया। ओनली 1 मिनट फॉर द टाइम। मैं कोई जात पात तो नहीं है, जात 800 लाख का जात नहीं है, कॉकरोच को क्या बोल रहे हैं, वो जो है तो कोई जात नहीं, वो एक ही जात है, वो गंधा है। हम रजनीगंधा नहीं, हम ओनली गंधा है, इससे हमारा जात है। ना हायरार्की सुनिए, बाइनरी हायरार्की वो एनजीओ का बात है, ये हमारा बात नहीं, ये मन का बात नहीं ना। हिजरा कम्युनिटी, हिजरा जो बोलते हैं वो तो एक पेशा है। हिजरा तो गंदा बात है ना, हिजरा ब्रियन्नल अच्छी बात है। আপনি বলুন না।
I would like to request to have some, since it's an autobiography session, let's hear from some painful or joyful moment.
Oh, I always painful, P-E-N, painful, not P-A-I-N, painful, because I am proud that I am a writer. হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, তোমরা শুধু তালি বাজাচ্ছ, আমি চাইছি তোমরা আমাকে কোশ্চেন করো। কোশ্চেন মানে কোনো দুঃখের কোশ্চেন না, কোনো পেইনফুল কোশ্চেন না। পৃথিবীতে অনেক দুঃখ আছে, গোলাপে কাঁটা আছে, কিন্তু কাঁটা ভুলে গোলাপটাকে দেখার চেষ্টা করো। কিছু বলো, তোমার ছাত্রছাত্রীরা খালি ছবি তুলবে, সেলফি তুলবে, তো সেলফিস হয়ে যাবে এত সেলফি তুললে। কথা বলবেন উনি, কিছু বলবেন।
If anybody has any question, he or she may ask or we'll wind up it, because we are
मेरा एक क्वेश्चन
getting late for the next session.
जो
ঠিক
We are
হ্যাঁ,
running out of time.
এটাতে প্রমাণ হলো যে আমরা যখন স্টেজে উঠবো আপনাদের নেক্সট সেশন শুরু করে দেবেন, আপনারা আত্মগোপন করবেন আর আমরা আত্মকথন বলবো।
एक क्वेश्चन मेरा तो
हाँ, ठीक है,
मैं
बोलिए।
ये जानना चाहता हूँ, जो हमारे जो बॉडी में हार्मोनल चेंजेस होते हैं, जैसे टीनेज आता है 12-13 में हार्मोनल चेंजेस बॉडी में होता है, तो ये जो ट्रांसजेंडर में भी वो फीलिंग कब होता है और उससे कैसे फीलिंग आता है?
हार्मोनल चेंज तो बाद में आते हैं, पहले तो मन में चेंज आते हैं। आप तो शरीर 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 करके बिकते हैं, हम लोग मन 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 करके घूमते हैं। थैंक यू, आपका नेक्स्ट सेशन शुरू कर दीजिए, क्योंकि বেশিক্ষণ সহ্য করা আমাকে আপনাদের পক্ষে হয়তো কষ্টকর হবে। বলো, ওই তো মেয়েরা, আমি চাইছিলাম কয়েকটা। আমি খুব খুশি হয়েছি যে একটি ফুলের মতো ছাত্রী আমাকে আমাকে প্রশ্ন করছো।
এই যে আপনার লাইফ মানে পিছনে এত কথা হয়, সামনে হয়তো বলবেন হ্যাঁ আমরা আপনার পাশে আছি, কিন্তু আপনার পিছনে আরও কথা হবে।
একদম।
আমরা স্টুডেন্ট হয়ে মাঝে মাঝে আমি নিজেই নিতে পারি না। আপনি এত মোটিভেশন কি করে পান যে এগিয়ে যাচ্ছেন?
আমি বুঝি যারা পেছনে কথা বলে তারা আমার কথা বলে নিজেরা স্যাটিসফাইড হয়। যখন জন জানবে যে ও তোমাকে তোমার কথা আলোচনা করে আনন্দ পাচ্ছে, তুমি খুশি হবে। হ্যাঁ বেটা, খুশি রহো। এইভাবেই খুশি হই আমি। আমি জানি যে হ্যাঁ, আমাকে নিয়ে তোমরা যা খুশি বলো, পিছনে করছো, সামনে তো করছো না। ঠিক আছে, আনন্দ করো, আমার কোনো তো অসুবিধা হবে না তাতে। কেন, আমি তো সেলফ স্যাটিসফাইড, তবেই তো আমি আত্মকথা লিখছি না।
এই এই যে এত আলোচনা যেটা কখনো কখনো নিজে নিতে পারি না, ওটা কি করে নেওয়া যাবে?
তুমি যখন ফ্লাইটে ওঠো, তুমি তাকিয়ে দেখো তলায় মেঘ, তুমি মেঘেরও ওপর উঠে যাবে এক সময়। যখন মেঘের ওপর উঠে যাবে তখন দেখবে যে সমস্ত মানুষরা তোমাকে পীড়া দেয়, তোমাকে কষ্ট দেয়, তারা খুব ছোট ছোট হয়ে যায়। তুমি তখন তোমার সাথে ডিভাইন অলমাইটির একটা যোগাযোগ হয়ে যাবে, হবেই। কেন, তোমার ভেতরে তো দুজন মানুষ থাকেন, একজন ভগবান, একজন শয়তান। যখন তুমি কানেক্ট করবে ভগবানের সাথে, তখন শয়তানটা অফ হয়ে যাবে। তখন তোমাকেও লোকে জিজ্ঞেস করবে তুমি কি করে পারো, তখন তুমি তাকে বলবে তুমিও পারবে যদি আমার মতো করো।
ম্যাম
অসংখ্য
ম্যাম
ধন্যবাদ।
হ্যাঁ বল।
ওকে।
ম্যাম মানুষের শরীরে লিঙ্গ থাকে, আপনার মধ্যে কি মনের কোনো লিঙ্গ থাকতে পারে?
আসলে লিঙ্গ সমাজের নির্মাণ, সমাজ তৈরি করে দিয়েছে ও মেয়ে ও ছেলে, এবং যার জন্য আমাদের সমাজে লেখিকা খুব কম, সব পুরুষ লেখক। আপনি দেখবেন লেখক মানে পুরুষ, এমনকি বিউটিশিয়ানও পুরুষ এখন। রান্না যখন বড় বড় রান্না হয় সেটা পুরুষরাই করে। মেয়েদেরকে একটা ঘরে রেখে দেওয়া হয়, অর্থাৎ গাভীর জন্য গোয়াল, কেন গাভী বাচ্চা দেয়, দুধ দেয়, আর যে ষাঁড় আছে ও রাস্তায় রাস্তায় ঘুরে বেড়ায়, বাজারে ঘুরে বেড়ায়। এখানে পশুদের মধ্যেও তো আমরা সেই একই জিনিস আরোপ করি। সেজন্য লিঙ্গ বলে কিছু হয় না। একজন মহিলা, ওই যে বলছিলেন না মহাশয়, তো মহাশ্বেতা দেবী যখন লেখেন, যদি কেউ না জানে উনি মহিলা কি পুরুষ, তো মনে হবে পুরুষের লেখা। আশাপূর্ণা দেবী নিজে বলেছেন যে তার লেখা পড়ে শরৎচন্দ্র লিখতেন অনিলা দেবী ছদ্র। আমাদের बंगाल में जो शरतचंद्र है वो लड़की लोग को नाम यूज करते हैं अनिला देवी छद्र। तो तब की कोई लड़की लोग, कोई लेडी वोमेन लेखिका नहीं थे हमारे समाज में। तो ये क्या है जो लेखा पढ़े जेंडरটা কিন্তু।
We are running out of time.
Okay,
Ma'am.
okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Ma'am is with us. She is here. Anybody who wants to interact, who wants to discuss, she's so, willing to talk. One thing she said, when you are getting pain, any problem, elevate yourself from that level. That will be sorted. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. You,
She has developed a connect.
Yeah. मामा मेरा मामा का नाम देखो।
we have already listened to the panelists.
इतना उम्र में इतना ज्यादा राग नहीं करिए, टेंशन आ जाएगा।
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye bye.
We have already listened to the panelists, and we are thankful to you all that you must have heard them very meticulously, very clearly, so that it will deepen our understanding of the nuances of writing autobiography, which is a very fascinating form of art, and it will continue to be appreciated and to be written for all time to come. Thank you all for the present hearing.
Let us put our hands together for the panelists and the moderator. They did a very wonderful job. Friends, it is very difficult, of course, in such time to open your heart out and speak to people of eminence or common. It's very difficult. That was a session on autobiography. We started a little late, but we are trying to cope it out. Once again, now, this is the 27th second session. Here the topic is art of novel writing. So, the term novel is a truncation of Italian word novella, from the plural of Latin novellus, a late variant of novus means new. So that what is now is the most languages, a diminutive denotes historical from the parent form. The novel is a genre of fiction, and fiction may be defined as the art and craft of contriving through the written word representation of human life and instructor divert or both. As per noted novelists, the 10 rules that guide good novel writing includes read voraciously, make a checklist of details, develop good habits, use your limited time wisely, build a relationship with an editor and don't stretch yourself at the first draft, seek out surprises in the second draft, start with characters and write for art's sake, and save the commercial analysis of this. Now, we invite on podium, the dais, the panelists, Biswas Patil ji, Mukul Kumar ji, Chandrahas Chaudhary ji, Lipi Pushpa Naik ji, and Damodar Mauje ji to kindly come on. Ladies and gentlemen, every great writer works in a different way, and here we have so many writers amongst us. Some writers work straight through from the beginning to end, and others in pieces they arrange later, while some others work from the sentence to sentence. So let's find out newer vistas of novel writing, which in future will guide the writers for creating classical works of novels and enrich our literature. May I request the panelists to kindly come on so that I can introduce them. Biswas Patil ji is here. May I request him to come on stage. Mukul Kumar ji, Chandrahas Chaudhary ji, Lipi Pushpa Naik ji, and Damodar Mauje ji to kindly come on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the panelists for the second session of second day of Literature Festival. I'd request the panelists of the last session to can still continue here with us. We have in our midst Vishwanath Patil ji, who is an eminent writer in Marathi. His first novel was published when he was only 17. He published 14 novels, 1 biography, 3 plays, and several other literary works. Films have been made on 2 of his novels, Pangira and Chandramukhi. Currently, he is the convener of Marathi Advisory Board of Sahitya Academy. He has been honored with Priyadarshini Zait Award, Indira Goswami Award, and Sahitya Academy Award for his novel Jhara Jhari in 1992. Mukul Kumarji is a bureaucrat, novelist and poet. At present, he is serving in the Ministry of Railways. His published works include 3 novels, As Boys Become Men, Seduction by Truth, and Ajaro Arsan, and 3 poetry anthologies, The Irreplaceable Echoes, Catharsis, and Rhymes of Ruins. Kumar's 4th fiction, Lost in Love Maze, is due for publication the next month or very recently. He has been honored with National Award for Outstanding Service in Indian Railways, Bharat Nirman Award for Literary Excellence, and Purvanchal Gaurav or Sanman for his contributions to the society as a bureaucrat and writer. We also have in our midst Chandrahas Chaudhary ji. He is a novelist and essayist. He is the author of 3 novels, Days of My China Dragon, 2019, Clouds 2018, and RG of the Dwarf 2009, India Travelers Literary Company. He is also the author of collection of literary essays, My Country is Literature. His writing has been translated into several languages, including German, Spanish, Hindi, Tamil, Korean, and Italian. Lipi Pushpa Naik is an academician, freelancer, and translator based in Bhubaneswar, Odisha. She specializes in writing classics from Odia, her mother tongue, to English. She has translated 15 works of Odia fiction, poetry, and plays into English, and including the Lakshmi Purana, which is believed to be the first feminist literature text in Indian language and dates back to 16th century. She is also a recipient of National Cultural Fellowship of Government of India and has reviewed books for prestigious magazines and newspapers. She has made a documentary on the lesser-known temples of Odisha and filmed a short adaptation of national television. With this, I welcome the panelists. And now, to chair this session, I would like to welcome Damodar Maujoji, who is an distinguished Konkani fiction writer, critic, script writer. He authored 16 books, of which 3 are novels and 5 are short story collections. His book of stories, Tereta's Man, was nominated for Frank O'Connor International Award in 2015. He has also written screenplays and dialogues for Konkani films, which bagged awards, and some of his stories have also been adapted for national television. He has co-authored, he is the co-curator of Goa Art and Literature Festival and founding member of PEN South India. He has been honored with Sahitya Academy Award and Bharatiya Jnanpith Award. Put your hands together for such a legendary personality. We definitely feel proud at SOA and this literary festival to have such a galaxy of dignitaries who has contributed immensely to the literature and have a chairman with difference. Sir, the dice is yours. Kindly take it out. Sir, can I give you a microphone there? No, I'll just how long do you have, when do you have set up?
So, a very good morning to all of you. Very few in the audience, but I hope it will come up, turn up. I don't know exactly how much time we have. We were slated to have 1 hour for the discussions, but I don't think we'll have 1 hour because it will be an encroachment upon the next panelist. So best thing is to restrict to maximum 1 hour, I would say. But with 5 panelists, including me, we will have hardly about 10 to 12 minutes each. So I don't know if it will. So that should be, yeah. With the distinguished panelists on this panel, I'm very happy to be here amongst them. Well, I'm not a novelist. I am a short fiction writer, just what I believe. I believe that my forte is short fiction, though I have also indulged in writing some novels. But then, well, sharing is not necessary that you have to be a novelist. I think at least my experience with psychology is that the person in the chair, his task is to manage everything within 1 hour. So it's a task of, you can say, ringmaster in a circus. So it will be very difficult to contain your thoughts just for 10 to 12 minutes. It's very difficult. But I would rather prefer to have the discussion as revealing rather than each one coming and addressing you for 10 minutes. So I don't know how it will go, but I'll let it go free-flowing discussion here. Well, the topic that is given to us is novel writing. Novel writing is a vast topic. I don't know how we will be able to, which aspect we are going to deal with. I'll leave it to the panelists, but then mostly we will restrict it to one's own experience as a novelist. That's what I think. Well, it is, it's a rather tricky situation, you know, when novel is one of the most popular forms of literature, at least going by the scenario today. I'm a short fiction, but I know the short fiction is taking sometimes a backbench, particularly when it comes to fiction writing. When you say fiction, it becomes novel writing. And particularly when you see the scenario with the publishers going after the novelist rather than the short fiction writer. Of course, my experience is different. My recently published book by Penguin was, the first edition was over within 2 months. I was very proud for that, but then I find most of the publisher, they prefer to hook the novelists for their works. But then as we are dealing with the novel only, so I think within the next 50, 60 minutes, we will try to cover as much as possible. So from the podium, I'm going to say this much only. I hope more people will turn up and make it more lively. Particularly, I thought the students will be interested in participating in the discussion. And I would rather have at least 10 minutes for discussions at the end of this session. Well, enjoy yourself, and I don't know how we are going to start with. Anybody can offer? Okay. To your left, on my right here, Vishwas Patil is a friend of mine, is a novelist friend, is very, very well known in Maharashtra, also in the rest of India, because most of his works are translated into other languages, many other languages, including Hindi. So Vishwas Patil, I'll just tell you a short episode. I'm not going to discuss, I'll not participate in other things thereafter. But then a long time back, when I was planning to write a novel on a dam that was happening in Goa, so I was looking for some material to do this study. So I even went to the site, I interacted with the people who were displaced, and I was keen on writing this novel. I made some notings also. And then once I was in Mumbai, and I was browsing through books, and I came across one book, Zhada Dharti. Zhada Dharti in Marathi. Of course, I'm very conversant in Marathi also. So I picked up the book because it was written particularly about the displaced people, displaced because of the dam. I took it home, and I was so much impressed by the book. I can tell you, my first impression was the book was as good as 100 Years of Solitude by none other than Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So I was so much taken aback by the book. The entire novel is about 300 and plus pages. But then it was amazing. That experience itself, I'll never forget it. Even today, I can remember page to page what happens on which page, just like the book by Marquez. So let us start with Vishwas Patil. He has huge experience of writing novels. Yes, I think, have you crossed the number of dozen? Yeah, so a dozen of novels so far he has written. He is still very active. He is also known in Maharashtra or in Marathi circles because of his historical novel, Panipat. It's about the Battle of Panipat. Very interesting novel. Again, voluminous. So I call upon Mr. Vishwas Patil to start the discussion. You can either take your podium.
Respected Damodar Maujoji and my friends, the writing of a novel is a great task in reality. With the help of a strong narration and outstanding characterization and different settings, you can take a small seed to the heights of a big banyan tree. Being a citizen of Mumbai, I was familiar with Lata Mangeshkar when she told me that listeners all over the world seek mental relief and joy through her songs. But in her entire life, she searched a solace through the work of master novelists. And of course, Sharat Chandra Chatterjee and his famous novel, Srikant, which was her favorite, mother told me she used to reread that novel at least once in 5 years. As Srikant is drenched with human emotions and the purity and dignity of human beings, it is a wonderful projection of a great female characters like Anu Didi, Rajalakshmi, Abhaya, Kamallata, etc. When Srikant wanders along with his friend Indranath on the banks of flooded river, they notice many dead bodies coming down with the current of the river after cholera epidemic. As they catch the body of a child, Srikant recognizes the Dudh Muha, that is a suckling child, and he gets a whiff of mother's milk on his lips. Here, not the novelist Sharat Chandra, but the Farishta of human race moves closer to the humanity, and this is the strength of novel form. We notice that the journey of even the greatest novel from very minor incidents. When I was reading biography of Leo Tolstoy, after War and Peace, he was all set to for a new novel on the subject Peter the Great. Even his outline was ready. Meanwhile, a small incident occurred in the neighborhood, and Tolstoy noticed a mistress of his friend, a tall, full-blown woman, threw herself under a freight train in nearby railway station. Tolstoy was observing her mutilated, bloody face. At the same time, his eyes were fixed on the mysterious smile on the dead body of her lips. Further, that ghost of Anna overpowered him completely, so much so that he pushed aside the plan and plot of his... Should I continue? Further, the ghost of Anna overpowered him completely, so much so that he put aside the plan and plot of his new novel, and he came out with Anna Karenina. The plot of the novel plays a very vital role. It should not be steady. It should cement with the flesh and blood in the process of writing. From numerous incidents, the proper selection of a few should be done with a creative purpose. The arrangement and rearrangement of related events is very important. While writing a new novel, I personally pack all my belongings as if I go to reside in a new village. Slowly I get familiar with the topography, nature, flora and fauna, and the people of that hamlet. The literary virtues of the novel can be achieved with great patience and diligence. I feel many times that any big or a small writer of the world, as he puts down his pen after finishing any work, at that very moment, he feels that his pen has conquered the world. But slowly his color fades away and he himself realizes its shortcomings. And in few days, therefore, the pickling of the story is a necessity. Unless it germinates properly, it can't emit fragrance as per the expectations. I feel, friends, any writing is not real writing. Rewriting is the real writing which takes us towards the finality of the novel. While writing his craft, novelist plays back and forth. Often, a minor character takes the front seat and moves the field by becoming a protagonist. When I was writing my famous historical novel Panipat, on the backdrop of third battle between Marathas and Afghans, the Maratha army all through history was criticized at its mismanagement and many shortcomings. But as I was all set to put up the blame of Maratha Peshwa Bhau Sahib and had wished to create a great villain out of it. But as the process of my writing and research went ahead, I slowly changed my view, and at the end, I come out Bhau Sahib as a hero and not as a villain. I feel very satisfied that due to my novel, the perception of history students changed towards looking at Panipat battle. The journey of novel writing comes with many shocks and surprises too. When Dostoevsky had first prepared the outline of his Crime and Punishment, he had planned the position of Marmelando, the drunkard father of heroine Sonia, as the central character. But slowly Raskolnikov emerged as the protagonist without telling Dostoevsky also. Further, this hero took over the entire work as his crime of killing very old woman and its guilt a real punishment all through his life. Many times, a powerful subject overruns the novel completely. The world-famous novel, All Quiet on the Western Front, speaks about grim war, the war that is fought in the trenches, with its slush and its hand-to-hand combats, a naked display of brutal, obscene, demonic war. There the flesh of youngsters was looted by the merchants of war, the Krolin running into the machine gun spray, the dismembering of limbs of the bodies, waging soldiers under trenches. When? Where did the writer remark, collect this frightening stuff? The answer is that he himself fought in the war and suffered a great war when he was 18 years old. As the novel was published in Germany, it exploded like a dynamite. It was perhaps the first work that spoke so loudly about the meaninglessness of war and its brutality. Friends, on the same line, when I was reading Khushwant Singh's Train to Pakistan, I was numbed with the atrocities on our border. If the subject carries a strong social message on the backdrop of some great incident, some happening that is about a war-torn area or a rattled world with any epidemic, such subject is bound to travel with countless characters and many incidents, plots, subplots. The Grapes of Wrath speaks about American Great Depression of 1930 as they described as a dirty 30s. During those days, tens of thousands of people were immigrated towards Oklahoma. While dealing with such subjects and covering its length and width, the search for an organic center becomes a great task for the author. In my 30s, I wrote, sir said, that novel, Jhada Jhadti, on thousands of people affected by construction of big dams in India and devastation of poor people, and their rehabilitation too. While writing this novel in English, A Dirge for the Damned, I was working as a district rehabilitation officer in a big district. I wrote the novel with such an intensity and great passion that during those days, at the age of 32, I got main Sahitya Academy Award. In short, it is necessary to go through a single dominant character. It is easy, but it is very difficult for a project where the community or human force on a big level is there. I personally consider conflict is a strong point for any novel. When the villain is a great obstacle, like somebody's destiny, like in Moby Dick, the ocean, and that fell, it becomes the enemy of Captain Ahab. A vital question always troubles novelists, readers, and critics as well. What came first, the egg or the chicken, character or the plot? But no doubt, the strength of many novels is the galaxy of its characters. The mighty and unforgettable characters always remain in the minds of readers. Some novels are stamped as pulp fictions as well. Godfather is a big example of the failure of a good novel. But one powerful aspect of it is always overrun all other ingredients, that is the projection of great characters in Godfather. That can't be denied. In Dostoevsky's The Idiot, the hero is a Prince Miskin who is a naive, unbalanced, epileptic. Then why did the beautiful Aglaya and Nastasia run after such vagabond? Why did Paro and Chandramukhi chase drunkard Devdas? Why do such young starlit women possess a kind of affection inside them, search for big and hapless heroes? Great writers like Sharat Chandra and Dostoevsky put extraordinary strength in their ordinary looking heroes, in their ordinary looking protagonists. When we notice such a bonanza in many novels like Steinbeck's Men and Mice, then Oscar Wilde's A Portrait of Dorian Gray. Many times an ace hunter, Bada Shikari, can also be killed by a tiger in retaliation. But it also true that many half-crafted idols create a stir and become part of appreciation and reverence. In reality, a good novel hinges out from the blood and bones of a writer. The process gives a long frustration and troublesome time. Furthermore, the amalgamation of incidents, back and forth narration, characters, the whole process offers him lots of agony and finally solace and ecstasy as well. Many people ask me, generally, how many drafts do you prepare for a novel? I retort to such enthusiastic question mongers, can you tell me how many times a sculptor hammers and chisels a rock for his creation? It is an author's religion to work without counting time. Many times the task is fulfilled even in a month, or it takes years together. Writing a novel and creating the characters is no less than wandering into a thick jungle. In this long expedition, you will have to burn your ships several times and often have to jump out from one ship to another yacht in the quest of masterpiece. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishwas. It was a wonderful talk. He spoke about his take on novel writing. Now we have 3 more panelists here. Rather than, would you prefer to sit here and talk? So we'll have a discussion here. You want to? Yeah, as you please. No, we can have discussion here itself, because the time is running out. So, yeah. To my right is Mukul Kumar, who has, actually I knew him as a poet. So I never knew that you also write novels, but of late, last 3 years, 5 years, I think he has been into novel writing. So he has his own experience. I have, to my left is Chandrahas Chaudhary, who has already made a name in this field. And nearly, if I know, at least 5 books. Yeah, more. 4 books to his credit. With his debut book, I think, Arzu, the Dwarf, and then The Cloud, and now more books have come. He will also have something to talk about his process of writing novels. And Lipi Puspa Nayak, whom I am meeting for the first time. So it will be wonderful to talk to you and have you on the panel talking about your process. A simple question I would like, actually I was expecting more of younger people in the audience, going by the experience of yesterday and today morning, but then it seems they have better things to do. But let's continue. So, Chandrahas, I would like to know your take on this. Why do you write? And for whom do you write?
Thank you, Damodarji. Okay, I'll get straight to the point. Recently, I met somebody who, these days it's hard to find a serious reader. And so he said, I go home from work and I read every evening, and I read 3 books a week. I read 150 books a year. And, for people like you and me, these are the sort of people whom we cherish as the, as the people who make up the ocean of literature. So I said to him, just out of curiosity, is there any novel that you have read recently which you could say that really struck you as beautiful? I said, novels? What do you mean novels? And I said, well, you know, novels are a big part of literature. He said, you know, I only read non-fiction books. I don't read novels. It's all made up. So what use can it be to you and me? And I think, in a way, that is such a emblematic answer of a time, which is that things that do not appear to have a straightforward value, whether of information, insight, knowledge, you know, it is not a management, it's not a spirituality book. Why should we go after all these creations of someone's imagination? Should it have any place in our world on the priority of all the things we need to do, from making a living to raising a family to taking care of people? What do novels mean? But at the same time, you know, this very fact that so many people feel or have not understood what novels can do shows, I mean, I think I was very impressed with Mr. Patel's presentation. There's so many reasons why you can say when you read one great novel in your life, it suddenly shows you all those aspects of human life and existence that suddenly a light has been shown in all those dark spaces. And at least speaking from my own example, I'm somebody who, when I look back on my life, I cannot make a distinction between the great events of my own life. You know, when you fall in love with somebody, when you marry somebody, when your parent passes away. I can't make any distinction between them and the great novels that I've read in terms of the quality of experience and the excitement, that feeling of being alive that you feel when reading a great, great book. And I think, Mr. Mazo, I mean, we are all writers. I think you'll agree with me. When we read a great novel as writers, we begin to feel a kind of jealousy. How did someone achieve such a fine perfection of a polish of language and insight into human beings, and that to insight into the life of different people of different classes, you know, and insight into the lives of men and women, and insight into the way different people speak. I love it when I read a novel and I see all the characters have a sort of language of their own. It's not the novelist casting a language on the characters. He's developed a tone, a style, a manner of speaking for each character. And that sense of, you know, life, a very good friend of mine said, a novel is just like life with all the boring bits cut out. And I think in some way, this is a very nice definition, because in a way, before I finish, one other reason why I think we try to write novels is that all our lives we are at the mercy of time. We have no control over time. You know, our lives proceed linearly. Sometimes we look back on our childhood, and memories are antidote against time. But most of the time, things happen to us that we have no control over. When you write a novel, you're almost like a god who can control the flow of time. Sometimes you turn a page in a novel, and the writer has written, 20 years had passed, and then, you know, you can speed time back and forth, and at the same time, you can take a single second or a single minute in someone's life and devote 20 pages to that. Some bits of time in life are much more significant than others. I think this is what the novel shows us. It casts light on all those things that may not seem important from the outside, or people might not know about, but all those hidden spaces of the heart are where novels go.
I recollect having read, I think it was Orhan Pamuk who said, the novels are like museums. Museums where you freeze the time and keep it in your shelf. The day you want to see, go through if you want to go to the past, take the novel out, read it, and you go into that time. So here we have Mukul with us, who has recently written at least 2 novels that I know of, 3 novels. So let us hear you. You share your experience on this. Because see, novel is something different. For each reader, it makes a different thing. What you write may be true for you. It may not be the same, it may not have the same impact on the reader. But your experience, please.
I think that is a very well-asked question. Like the writer tells his or her own experiences, and it is a challenge to strike that chord of empathy in the readers, that to what extent they are able to relate to the context and to the experiences of what has been written and what is being served to him or her. In this regard, I will just share with my own experiences. Like I will try to live to the theme of this, discussion, and the art of novel writing. Before coming to the exact question, like how will you ensure that readers would be able to relate to what you are writing, I would just like to, bring out the theme, like art of novel writing. The first thing, if you want to really write a novel, the first question that you are going to ask yourself, whether I want to write, I can write. And that is basically, that brings into picture the intuition. The first component of the novel writing is intuition. And intuition operates as two levels. The first level is that whether I can write, and that comes only from reading. The books you read, every time, like I will share my experience, like every time I used to read a novel, somewhere deep down that urge, I could sense that urge growing, that okay, I also want to write, I can write. That is the first question you are going to ask yourself, and only reading, gives you the answer that whether you can really write or not. The second, layer at which intuition works, like what you want to write. I believe that don't take to pen unless and until you have something compelling to say. That keeps itching you somewhere that, okay, you are totally restless. You are totally restless, and that story is waiting to come out of you. So that is the first component, that is the intuition. Then comes intellect. Intellect, like everybody, all of us are living life, all of us are having some experiences. But why a writer is able to transform those experiences into a story, so there comes the second component, like intellect. And intellect is, what is intellect? Intellect is just power to lend objectivity to the abstract things. Like what is abstract for a layman, for a writer, he is able to articulate it, he is able to express it, and with his intellect, he has the power to lend objectivity to the abstractions. The third component is imagination. Intuition, intelligence, intellect, and then imagination. Imagination is the most crucial, the most fundamental component to transform those experiences into a dreamlike state which you want to create in your writing, in your story. Imagination, like at the touch of the imagination, truth becomes transcendental and reality becomes, something like surreal. It turns surreal. And I'm reminded of a very famous quote, no tears in the writer, no tears in the, reader. You have to create a dreamlike state from which the reader should never come out. So that is the power of, that can come only from imagination. And now coming to this, that brings me to the answer to his question. Like, how do you ensure that the readers are able to relate? So you have to, with your imagination, you create that dreamlike state, you cast a spell upon the readers, and he ultimately, when you give action to the characters, and you transform it into something where readers are compelled to think, okay, I would also be acting in the same way. Okay, but I can justify the action of the characters. That is how you bring the readers into the picture. And again, like reading a good book is like entering into the silent conversation with the, with the book. You talk, the book starts talking to you, and you start talking to the book. It is like silent conversation. So I believe like imagination is the most powerful thing. And I'm going a step further. I'm reminded of Oscar Wilde, who says one step ahead that imagination has also its limitation. Imagination can be imitative. The fourth component is the most crucial component that really produces the great piece of art. And in the context of novel, it is but it is a fiction. Like critical spirit. Many a time you write something and you revisit it, then you develop a reader's perspective between the time lag between the time when you have written it and the time you revisit your own writing, and the time lag induces in you the perspective of a reader, and then you decide, okay, you have that, okay, whatever I have written is not sufficient. Somewhere it is lacking. And that critical spirit is something that really finishes a work of art. Thank you.
You also work, Mukul, you also work as a bureaucrat. Does your profession help you in this respect, or it's a hindrance?
I think this is the question which is posed to me at every forum, like being a bureaucrat. I believe, that is my profession, and at a point of time, it was my passion also. Like when you write an examination like civil services, I think you have to be passionate, but also about it. So, but at this point of time, of course, I could, that passion has grown, it has matured with time. As regards how bureaucracy helps me or how bureaucracy affects my passion, I'd like to say it offers me a variety of experiences. And as I told you, writing novel is nothing but transforming those experiences into something surreal, something give it an artistic shape. Being a civil servant, I feel that it offers a variety of experiences. And it gives me the fodder. I always treat art as an interplay between the fodder and the fire. Fodder is the human experience which you gather, and fire is your creativity. And when the two blend with each other, something some art is produced. So, being a bureaucrat, I feel yes, it offers me a variety of experiences. Otherwise, I don't know about the other profession. Every profession, I think, offers some experience. I think the variety is amazing.
So we have Vishwas Patil also, since he is dwelling upon the same question, I would like to pose to him also, because Vishwas has worked as a bureaucrat, and when I read his book, his novel, Jhada Charti, as I talked to you about the displacement of the people when the dam comes up, he also has narrated in such a way that it feels real. So what is your experience as a bureaucrat? It has helped you writing novels or making your writings, rather making a writer successful?
Of course, you can collect many experiences from day-to-day work, and you can notice many characters, incidents, etc. Being a bureaucrat is he has used very good word. You can collect good fodder also. But my experience was not that good about my bureaucratic career, because I became very famous because of my Panipat and Jhada Charti. So much so that it was very difficult to participate in any ceremony with the minister, because readers were coming to have a photograph with me, have my signature. Then my bosses were advising that, Vishwas, you wait at Circuit House and look this and that. So it was difficult, and I should tell one incident that when I wrote this Jhada Charti, a dirge for the damned, one deputy secretary put up note to the chief minister that you can find please find out the page of this 500 novel. Please find out a single page which is not against the government. And this bureaucrat should be suspended. And that type of note went ahead. I was on the verge of suspension, and one fine morning, it is declared that I got Sahitya Akademi Award. So they thought that it is not good to suspend such a bureaucrat. But you see, I got good experience also, bad experience also. But for having a richness of experience, bureaucratic life is really better, though I got a lot of agony.
Thankfully, you got Sahitya Akademi Award in time. Otherwise, probably would have spent more time on writing in that case. It could have been positive anyway. Yes, now we'll I'll rather request Lipi Pushpaji, since I'm not, acquainted with your writings, will you please?
Yeah, sure. I'll go there.
Yes, as you please. Thank you.
So how much time I've got? 10 minutes?
10
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me say a few things about me because most of you know me. I started my academic career way back in the 90s. I teach English language and literature, and I took up translation studies for my PhD. So after I finished my PhD, I said, why not be a translator? Because most of us are writers, so I thought, let me translate my literature into English so that it reaches a bigger readership. So I started translating. I picked up books which have some kind of a timelessness about it, not like localized issues or anything, artistically also. So classics fit in there. I took up classics. A few famous names are Lakshmi Purana, which is an Odia independent Purana, not in the shadow of any Sanskrit Puranic tradition. And then also a 17th century work, Chatura Binod, by a very bright court poet, who in fact lost his vocation as a court poet because he criticized the king. So I did that. Then I have taken up some modern words from my language, Shantanu Kumar Acharya, Rushikesh Panda, Ramakanta Ratha. You must have been acquainted with these names. So I have translated fiction, I have translated play, I have translated poetry. I was very comfortable with this world of translation. It was challenging. So I was doing that till I thought that I have some material in me as a creative writer. Since I was also teaching English language and literature, that language was also staying with me. So when I finally decided enough, I have done translation, I thought I should use those materials which are really bugging me to give it a shape. So that another interesting part is my mother was suffering from all those imaginary diseases. So like I have this, I have that, I have cancer, I have these. So I was taking care of the medical part of it. Then every time after the diagnosis, after the investigations, she was diagnosed with no disease. So that was it was humorous also. I thought, let me start a comedy kind of stuff. I started my book. I titled my book, Carry On Miss Caretaker. The caretaker was me. So carry on Miss Caretaker, even if there is no disease in that. But interestingly, and that is what the art of novel is about, the book took its own course. It became a very realistic text spanning 3 generations of women. So people whom I know very close from. So it became a proper it didn't become a comedy, like sitcom or whatever you call it. It didn't become that. It didn't become a rom-com. It became a proper novel, an English novel. I will read a few lines to substantiate why I call it a proper English novel, because honestly, I don't like much of Indian writings in English. Honestly, I don't find that English, pardon my arrogance, it's not my arrogance, it's my conviction, as a teacher of English language and literature. I find, I read an Australian novel, Narrow Road Down South, that's about the Japanese atrocities on the Australian POWs, prisoners of war, during the Second World War. So that English I found very, very different from international English. At the same time, that was international, that was Australian English. So obviously, Latin American English is also different. Most of it, of course, we read in translations. So that international English has to be there if you want to write a novel in English. And translation is another matter. If you are writing in your regional language, from which the best work, as for my conviction, comes. So that has to be translated again. But since this language has stayed with me, I thought I'll be writing in English. So now, what are the materials? Language is one part. You have to have complete command over the language you are using, be it your mother tongue, be it your the English language. Then the characters, as my co-panelists were saying, the characters, you must know them really. You can't, if you don't know the life of a bureaucrat, for example, or a minister, for example, write about them. So I'm fortunate that I don't know them at all. Okay, so I am very much linked to the rural India, rural Odisha. My childhood impressions of rural Odisha is very strong. It has stayed with me. It will not go from me. It will stay with me. My next novel will be about rural Odishan countryside, which saw a lot of prosperity. As a child, I have seen it from very close in my village. So my next novel will be about that. I don't mind social realism as long as it's inspiring. There was a time which I have witnessed, which really inspired me. When I think of it in retrospect, I know what we have lost. So I want to document that loss. The Odisha that we knew, the Odisha that is now. I want to document that for posterity. Odisha was never a very poor state, as we take very pride in stating. And then India, coming to India also. I'm very proud of my country. I'm very proud of whatever it has offered me till now. I'll not go against it. Forget about politicians. Who is about politicians? This country is there. This country has given us everything that we want. The previous speaker was an MLA. I didn't find a word of nicety or appreciation about this country, about this great country and civilization. I was really very, very disturbed. Why can't we appreciate? Why can't we be indulgent about our country when others are doing the same thing? Institutions are not only for agitating students. No, please don't do that. See, for this one night fame, for this one book fame, we can't misguide an entire generation, young generation, which have very impressionable minds. So I am very patronizing about my country, which has reflected in this novel. I have shown the ills. This is the fight of three women. And about great novels, which my co-panelists say that it is like it is the writer's experience also. I will give you two examples. A House for Mr. Biswas by Naipaul. When I read that novel, it reminded me of my grandmother, not my grandfather. My grandmother, the struggle she went through as a widow, as a very young widow. And she settled down in Bhubaneswar. She reared her children, and they all became established. She made them respectable citizens, all single-handedly. And I'm not bearing a kind of brief for feminism. She did it as a human. So I'm really scared of, being branded a feminist also, because I'm not one, I'm a humanist. I also suffer when a man suffers. So that novel also has this streak of feminism as well as humanism. She is doing her duty. She's also a caretaker. She's taking care of her children, very spontaneously, outside any slogan that I'm a widow, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. No. An Indian woman somehow finds that kind of strength in her. And that strength, I think, in the Indian context comes from spirituality, which is a very major part of this book. Our belief system, our knowledge system, our knowledge system in the sense our knowledge of these those herbs, those medicinal plants, our knowledge about these tithis and these stars movement, everything, our cuisine, all those things have gone into this book. So this is a regional book, it is an international book. If we have to compete at the international stage as international writers, we have to do this. We have to take the flavor of our country outside. like Latin American novels. When I started reading, when I didn't know what pizza was, I knew what it was, but because of my reading from those books, because they have lots of their culture in that. So saying all that, I'll just read one more point I wanted to share with you. I finished this book by Milan Kundera, that is Jacques and his master. In that book, he has given an introduction also in 7-8 points. One of the point is, let not feelings substitute for your behavior. Let not feelings substitute for truth statements. So it should be, your feelings should be there. It should not interfere with what you really want to say. You can't just blackmail or, mobilize your readers through saying something very personal which happened to you. Everybody has their own struggle. We can't just, throw it on others. So that way he says that Dostoevsky's world is quite, is quite intimidating to him, because we all know that he was a humor. He handled pain through humor. So that is what he says. He has taken solace or refuge in the Renaissance as an option. So I also quite agree with that point, that our feelings are our personal. They should not really interfere with what we are trying to say in the novel, in the statements we want to see. And then finally, I'll conclude by reading out one little paragraph. The context is, and this, as I have said, this is just novel about 3 generations of women. The youngest one, like the granddaughter, is meeting the grandmother for the first time as a young child of 4. So that impression of that child, I'll just read out. And I mean, what I mean by using international language, I don't know if I have lived up to it, but I have tried. It has come to me naturally as a teacher of English language and literature, and as a person who has handled translation, all those things. So now this little child is meeting her grandmother for the first time as a girl of 3 or 4, and that grandmother, that widow, who became widow very prematurely, she is a widow by then also. So there she stood. That means the grandmother. Her name is Arundhati. Again, Arundhati is that star, that little star, beside, in that Great Bear constellation. And my question is, how is this woman there? Okay, if we are talking about feminism, and how India is run by patriarchy, then why is she there? Among the 7 great sages, Arundhati is also there. So that was my consolation as a woman. So now there she stood. I'm reading out from my novel. There she stood in front of a doorway to the left of the single-story building. The lady, in her overwhelming glow of molten gold, complemented in the burnish of the jewelry on her, a beatific grin on her ethereal face, her black, shining hair encroaching into her forehead and highlighting the grace of her blank forehead. She's a widow, blank forehead. Follow me, Shanta told the children, as she bent down to touch Arundhati's feet with both hands. Arundhati gathered up the kids and said, "Another time, daughter." In that non-impressionable age, Flowery, that's the girl child, was hitched to the scene, a scene that will stay with her. The warmth with which the big lady collected them. The confidence that glittered in her supremacy, as if she was the monarch of that neighborhood. And most important, she made her forget the rickshaw puller she had been awaiting a wee glance from. So much so that her soiled sari, a blasphemous contradiction to her irresistible charm, became a voluntary redundancy. "This is the 6th time I came to check," she said, leading them in through the doorway. So thank you for your patient hearing, and thanks, SOA, for inviting me at this prestigious occasion. Thank you.
Thank you, D.P. Pushpaji. In fact, generally I advise my younger writers, when they are suffering through writer's block or they don't think of anything to write, then please take up translations. And here I find a writer who has started with translations and then, is it not? You have translated. You have translated from Odia to English, right?
I do, but this is my novel.
No, that's what I said. So we have now has written her own creative writings. But anyway, we have a few minutes more. We have. Oh, I thought 1 hour I was given. We started at 12:45.
Yes, to me?
No, let's just finish the last round. I told him we'll come back. So anyway, we are finishing within the next 5 minutes. Yeah. Yes, Chandradas, you have been traveling across the country. Also, you have lived abroad. How do you found the cross-cultural aspects reflecting in your writings? Or what do you have to say about this? Because you have already, I think you have lived your life in Mumbai and then Delhi, then again Bhubaneswar, and also in UK. So please, how has it reflecting? How is it reflecting? Or is it helping you?
Yeah, I think that has been a good luck to have lived in many places. At some point, during the first lockdown 3 years ago, I thought for once, one cannot even leave the confines of one's own house. And I was in this hotel in Bangalore, and over 3 months, I sat down and put together a book of 60 or 70 essays about all the writers that I love the most, including 20 or 30 Indian novelists, which is this book of mine, My Country's Literature. And if I may read 2 paragraphs from it. I thought at some point, instead of just speaking about novels, I would like to write somewhere what is it about novels that I love the most. And here are 2 or 3 paragraphs from the IT. Magisterial and beautiful language and highly polished sentences are combined with naturalistic speech and street slang. Meaning is met at the level of human drama and also by the form in which the story is cast, by who is doing the telling. The novel is also a sophisticated time machine. In a good novel, the flow of life, highly contingent and unstable, can be experienced on the page. The experience of time is intensified, and all the banal moments of real life are ruthlessly weeded out. And just like in life, reality in novels did not easily give away its secrets. To pierce the veil of reality of novels was to gain confidence in doing the same at some point in life. You had to work out the code of the book, tune your own receptors to the pitch of the writing, piece together the narrator's worldview from the shards of observation about characters, be alive to the play of irony, the meanings of certain juxtapositions, cuts, and switches of perspective. Novels were written to be read, but novels were themselves readers. They read and interpreted the field, the people within the narrative field, and they also supplied the means to read entire cultures, the lives of distant countries that one might never visit. So this is the point I also want to take up, continuing from what Mr. Vyapari was saying in the previous session, that I don't think there's ever been a better way to travel while sitting in your armchair than by reading the great novels of the world.
In fact, I feel sorry that some of the panelists are not getting enough time to express themselves, but this is always the case. We started late. We started at 12:45 in my watch. May be different in others' watches. But then I'm happy that I'm concluding within 56 minutes now. I thank the panelists, Vishwas. I thank Mukul, Chandrahas, and also you, Lipi Pushpaji. I would love to have more interactions with you later. But then, and thank you, whatever the small audience is in front of me for this patient hearing. And thank you, SOA University,
Sir,
for
extremely
giving us
sorry
this opportunity.
to drag your feet, sir. The discussion was quite nice. And I believe we should put our hands together for such a nice discussion. I thank you all from the core of my heart, sir. Paucity of time is the real problem. Thank you so much, panelists. Thank you so much, Chairman. Now, we'll be move on to the third session, just before lunch. Thanks, sir.
Namaskar. A very warm afternoon to one and all present over here. I, Akanksha Das Goswami from MBA, welcomes you all to the Soar Literary Festival. To start the occasion, we have today's session on Bhakti literature in India. The pain as prayer, Bhakti writing as spiritual expression, a literary symphony of love and surrender. Bhakti literature in India refers to a rich tradition of devotional poetry and writings that emerge from various religions and languages. It spans many centuries and has significantly influenced religions and cultural traditions. So their works express deep devotion, love, and personal connection with power. To start with the further session, we have with us the chairperson, Kalidas Mishra ji, the panelist, M.A. Alvar ji, Pranav Khular ji, Pradeep Jyoti Mahant ji, Binayak Banopadhyay ji, Vishnupada Sethi ji. To start the panel discussion, I would like to request our delegates to come up on the stage and take their distinguished chairs. I would like to request the volunteers to take further the session. Now we have with us our chairperson, Kalidas Mishra ji, the professor of English, Sambalpur University, translating Bhakti in the proceedings of National Indian Writing in English, verses from the Void, Writings as Redemption. Doris Lessing, the Nobel Prize winner in Literature of 2007, From Raj to Swaraj, the story of English in India. We have with us M.A. Alvar ji, an acclaimed Sanskrit scholar who has specialized in all the systems of Indian philosophy. He has been working as a professor of Nyaya Shastra for more than 20 years at Government Maharaja Sanskrit College, Mysore. He has been a research scholar for about 3 years at Indian Council of Philosophical Research, New Delhi. We have with us Pranav Khular ji. He has worked for the central government in the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Culture. He has been writing extensively on Indian philosophy and spirituality for the Speaking Tree column of the Times of India for the last 25 years. We have with us Pradeep Jyoti Mahant ji. He is a professor of Cultural Studies at Tejpur University. He worked in All India Radio before shifting to academics. He is a distinguished scholar of cultural history of Assam who has made significant contribution towards a wide understanding of diverse facts of Sankradeva movement. We have with us Binayak Banopadhyay ji. He is among the promising young crop of poets in India who is now regarded as the changing face of Bengali fiction. He has received the prestigious Kritibas Award, Bangla Academy Award, Vyasnagar Award, among others. Binayak ji represented the Bengali language and India in the Awa International Writers Program held at Awa University in USA in 2014. Now I'd like to request our esteemed chairperson, Kalidas Mishra ji, to start the discussion of the session. Up to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a distinguished panel of experts, and I thank the audience for bearing with time, and I'm glad that you have taken care to be here. Audience is thinning gradually. The point of discussion is Bhakti literature, and we have to discuss in brief, what we mean by Bhakti literature. Maybe I'll be initiating some questions and I'll be requesting, we have a distinguished panel, Professor M.A. Alvar, Professor Pranav Kumar, Professor Pradeep Jyoti Mahanta, and Professor Binayak Bandyopadhyay. And we're still waiting for Dr. Vishnupada Sethi. Bhakti literature in Odia, written by poets, maybe Bhakti literature by common consent, it emerged sometime in 15th century, early 16th century. What was the time like, when we were talking about that particular era, 15th century, late 15th century, early 16th century, I was just going through that. It was a time of political unrest, so much of political turmoil, so much of social unrest. If you think of early 16th century when the Panchasakhas, the 5 friends, emerged in the literation, think of the time, Pratap Rudradev died sometime in 1538. From 1538 to 1568, 30 years, tumultuous time, so much of political unrest. Pratap Rudra's sons, minor sons, they were just summarily killed. Almost non-entities they were, but quickly murdered in succession by Pratap Rudra's ambitious minister Govinda Vidyadhar. Govinda Vidyadhar usurped the throne and founded the Bhori dynasty, and he ruled from 1540 to 1549, and his son Narsingha Jana killed the father, killed Govinda Vidyadhar. Narsingha Jana was killed by one Mukunda Harichandan, the then governor of Cuttack, who emerged as the ruler of Odisha in 1560 till 1568. Imagine such a time, from the perspective of 21st century, if you are looking back, what sort of a tumultuous time it would have been. Think of the social unrest. That was the time actually when Sanskrit was the dominant factor. The upper class people, the Brahmins, they dominated. Sanskrit was the language of power. Brahmins were very much dominating. And ordinary people coming from the lower rungs of the society, they suffered a lot. They didn't have permission to enter the temple. They didn't have permission to, learn Sanskrit, learn the Vedas. So that was a time of political upheaval, social unrest, cultural, degradation was there because the lower class people come from the lower rungs of society, they were not getting any chance. And time was very much propitious. Time was very much ripe for the people to protest. And Bhakti literature emerged as a form of social protest. The 5 friends, Jagannath Das, Balaram Das, Josepanta Das, Achyutananda Das, Sisu Ananta Das, if you go through their writings, one thing happened. They revolted against the caste hierarchies. They revolted against the Brahminical supremacy, revolted against the higher echelons of people coming from the higher echelons of power. They revolted against the dominance of Sanskrit. Instead of Sanskrit, the common language of the day, that was used. Instead of, the Brahminical order of supremacy, they thought that those things are to be, usurped, and the common people should be given prominence. And you don't have to go to a temple to meet your God. You can worship God from your home. And you don't have to follow so much of rituals, so much of, ceremonies are not necessary when you are talking in terms of your interaction with the divine. So they use the common language, Odia. went against Sanskrit, went against all the rituals, went against all the Brahminical supremacies, and whether you are worshipping a god, Saguna god or Nirguna god, a god without form or god with form, that doesn't matter. Go against rituals, go against ceremonies, go against this supreme language, Sanskrit, go against all the dictates. There was not a movement as such, Bhakti movement. But when I was thinking about the Bhakti literature, they were trying to come at a particular period in history because the time demanded some sort of a rebellion against the supreme order of the Brahmins, the hegemonic order of the Brahmins, against this dominant Sanskrit, against rituals, hierarchies. They went against all the four pillars of the society. People are equal. Content of character must be taken into account. Your devotion to the Lord must be taken into account. It doesn't matter to which religion, to which caste you belong. All those things. Now, because we have a distinguished panel, we will come back. So I would be requesting first Professor Alwar, when, we are talking about Bhakti literature, what sort of a time it was when, the writers in your language, in your tradition, they were writing. And was there some sort of a social upheaval, political unrest? Was the time demanded that there should be some sort of resurgence to protest against the dominance of the upper echelons of power? Just elaborate, and then we'll go to other members. Was there a conscious movement? And who are the poets, who are the writers who are writing? So Professor Alwar. Just be brief and so that we can listen to others.
I first of all offer my salutations to all the people on the stage and off the stage. And already we have we are about to approach 1 o'clock, in which this session was supposed to end. So we are beginning at the time when we are supposed to end. And before I respond to the issues raised by the Honorable Chair, Shri Kalidas Mishra ji, I would like to say a few words, and I will conclude my talk within 4 or 5 minutes, given the paucity of time. In Sanskrit, there is a saying, Bubhukshitam na pratibhati kinchit, which is echoed by the Buddha who said, you cannot teach philosophy to hungry minds. So all of us are hungry, and I think our capacity to give attention is becoming less and less. So there is a very, when we talk about Bhakti literature, I am reminded of a very beautiful saying by Will Durant, who has, as you all know, written 2 wonderful books which are in the form of novels, The Story of Philosophy and also The History of Philosophy. In this book, he has made several wonderful statements. He says, science divides, philosophy unites. So even when you conduct an experiment, so when you give it to a scientist, he will go on dissecting, and ultimately he will go to the atomic level and see what happens, what is happening. That is his type of observation. Whereas when you give it to a philosopher, he will do it at a mass level and say, this is what it is all about. That's why Will Durant says, science tells you everything about something, whereas philosophy tells you something about everything. This is the difference between science and philosophy. And in the context of bhakti, Bhakti is very, very closely associated with philosophy because any tradition you take, whether it is Ramanujacharya or Shankaracharya or Madhvacharya or even the Abrahamic religions, which advocate bhakti without any difference, they are all backed up by some system of philosophy. So that way, just as philosophy unites, bhakti also unites. There is no doubt about it. That is the first point. And second point is, when we talk about bhakti literature, we all know that Ramayana is bhakti literature. Though it has several dimensions, you can view it as a kavya, as a very wonderful composition, which has alankaras, prosody, which has figures of speech, which has several other aspects. But the entire India today is united because of Ram and also because of Ramayana. And Rama came to be known because of Ramayana. So there is no the Adi Kavi and it is primo literature. And later we have redactions of Ramayana in all the regional languages. You have Ramcharitmanas, which is once again which encompasses entire India. Then you have in Oriya Ramayana, you have Kamba Ramayana in Tamil, you have Kumaravyasa Bharata, you have another Ramayana in Kannada, in Telugu, in Tamil, in every Indian language you have a Ramayana. So, as I see it, bhakti literature is the most important uniting point for the entire country, irrespective of caste, creed, sex, etc. And then when we come to Mahabharata also, it is the same. And most of the literatures in India are influenced in Ramayana and by Ramayana and Mahabharata. And that way, I would like to say that bhakti is the important movement that has united the entire country, that had united the country, and that will unite the country also in future. As far as the literature and also the issues that were raised by Sri Kalidas Mishra ji is concerned, when he was talking about rebellion against the original class domination, etc. Personally, I don't subscribe to that view because and it's a very contentious issue which I would not like to go into. And also personally, based on the facts and evidences that I have with me, I don't personally subscribe to that view that there has been a caste domination. Of course, there have all these things are there in society. But when we talk about bhakti literature, I see it as a unifying force rather than a divisive force. And in every aspect of society, we see that it's a unifying force only. Of course, in every sphere of life, you have people who actually try to divide society based on caste, creed, sex, and so many other aspects or so many other criteria. But as far as specifically responding to the point of Kalidas Mishra ji, personally I see bhakti literature as a unifying force, not as a divisive force. I also see it as something that inspires people, that brings people together. For example, I belong to a place called Melkote, where it's a temple town that is more than 1,000 years old. And all sections of people, and I don't like to use the word scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, because they are all very much abused words today. But all classes of society or all people belonging to all the communities have certain tasks to do. And when there is a procession of the Lord, the first person who is leading the person belongs to scheduled caste, though I don't like to use that word. And all of us prostrate before the Lord where he is leading the procession. You can see it today also. And it was Ramanujacharya who gave the name Harijans to the Dalits, so-called Dalits. So that way, bhakti has always been a uniting factor. Bhakti literature has always been a uniting factor, and it will remain to do so. And personally, I am sorry that I don't subscribe to the view of that. So with these words, I conclude by saying that let us all once again unite under the umbrella of bhakti and enrich ourselves and attain enlightenment and liberation thereafter. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Thank you very much. That is very much enlightening because bhakti literature unites, never divides. It is not a divisive force. Yeah, I fully subscribe to that. You know, there are other questions when you are talking about bhakti. You know, the bhakti poets went against the ritualistic practices, went against the basic rituals, but, you know, if you follow the Vedas and the Upanishads, you know, you find actually they were talking about the soul, talking about the overt soul, talking about Pinda Brahmanda, you know, the whole cosmic forces which are very much within. So they rejected the rituals, but in a way they were very much participating in the process where, you know, the Upanishadic God were very much, you know, accepted in a way. Coming to Bhakti literature again from other parts of India, we know Shankardev. You know, Shankardev from Assam, you know, came to Puri, stayed there. 3-4 times he had come to Puri. And we learned from Professor Pradip Jyoti Mahanta to what extent tradition in the Northeast, you know, had, you know, rejuvenated, enlivened, you know, the whole, you know, literature of the region. And again, the same question, whether, you know, the time demanded a set of writing that we know as Bhakti literature, or it was just, you know, how come that 15th century, 16th century, that was the time when there was so much of this resurgence of Bhakti. Earlier, you know, the tradition, the Bhakti poets were there. They had written poems on Bhakti, devotion. You know, as rightly pointed out by Professor Alwar, Ramayana and Mahabharata, we have abundant instances. So, Professor Pradip Jyoti Mahanta, please enlighten us about the tradition of Bhakti there from your region. Professor Mahanta.
Namaskar. Thank you, Professor Misra, and also the respected Vidwans on the panel and a distinguished audience. I first congratulate SOA for mounting this magnificent festival, SOA Literary Festival, with all the dynamics of the past and the present. With reference to the chairperson's query, let me address the particular point of the social compulsions in which Shankardev appeared in Assam. It was yet to be called Assam in the 15th century. It was called as Kamarupa. There were 3 names. The mythical period of Assam was called as Pragjotishpur. The medieval period was Kamarupa, and the later part, the today's Assam, starting from the later part of the Ahom rule, it came to be called as Assam. Well, the medieval history of Assam, or Kamarupa for that matter, at that point of time, was in a very chaotic situation. Chaotic situation in the field in the sense that it was a composite kind of, political structure of 3 different, sovereign states and also tribal principalities, number 1. Number 2, at the same time, so far the religio-cultural condition of the Brahmaputra Valley, it will be wiser to say the Brahmaputra Valley instead of a particular state. The Brahmaputra Valley, because there was constant internecine wars among the tribes, among various dynasties, and so on. The fratricidal wars were going on. There was an inner call from the mind of the society, for creating a unifying force so that there is some kind of harmony, some kind of social unification. And the message of Bhakti was call of the time. And in 1449, in which Srimanta Shankardev was born, he was facing all those trials and tribulations of the people. Born in a Barahuya family, a kind of feudal lordship, he experienced all the kinds of troubles in the popular mind, and at the same time being trained in the Sanskrit Tola of Mahendra Kandali, a Brahmin scholar. He got to know the great traditions of Indian knowledge system, the canons of the Bhakti faith, including perhaps the first kind of experience with the Bhagavata Purana, and so on. Coming back as a graduate from the Sanskrit Toll, under the tutelage of Mahendra Kandali, he experienced again the kinds of situation there, and there was an inner call, as I said, of Bhakti that could be a unifying force to create a sense of social harmony, a chord of social unification among all kinds of people. And he found in Bhakti that kind of kernel, that kind of force, that kind of, the impetus which could take as an instrument. So, Bhakti was not only a particular branch of religious faith, but it was a kind of instrument of social transformation which Shankardev used to unify the society, to create a kind of communal chord of harmony among the people, and at the same time to go inward to the popular mind with the faith of Bhakti being the Parama Prema Rupa. Thank you, sir. Yes, with another point that in his young age, at the age of 32, he chose to visit pilgrimage and stayed for a better part of his pilgrimage, about 12 years in Sri Kshetra Puri. When the Panchasakhas of Orissa, the great Panchasakhas of Orissa, were yet to emerge, when he was in Puri, perhaps Balaram Das, or the eldest of the Panchasakhas, was around his teens. And going back from Puri, he started his mission of bhakti with all kinds of portals of the entire Assam Vaishnavism, or the bhakti movement in Assam that he led. And he brought about a kind of cultural resurgence, unprecedented and not even also unrepeated in the social, political, and cultural history of Assam. Sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Pradeep Mahanta. Now, I'll be just, just reciting a Vedic hymn. We are familiar with that. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani paschyantu ma kaschit dukhavan bhavet. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah. When I say this, I also include myself. When I said, let everybody be happy. But there was one poet in the 19th century from Orissa, Bhima Bhoi. He just surpassed the basic hymn. He says that, let the world be saved, let my life be condemned in hell, but let the world be saved. Praninka arata dukha apramita, dekho dekho keba saho, mojibana pache narke padithao jagata uddhara ho. Let the world be saved. Bhima Bhoi went beyond these basic hymns. He never thought of himself, never thought of redeeming himself. Let the world be saved, let me be in hell, let me be condemned in hell. So that's sort of bhakti. And when you are talking about, such enlightening thoughts, what's it? 19th century Odisha again, tumultuous time, second half especially. He was emerging, like the Bhakti poets emerging in 15th century, 16th century. So we'll be listening to Professor Pranab Kular. Now everybody is familiar with the column that he used to write, Speaking Tree, from Times of India. Very much oceanic in his depth, but very much brief in his presentation. So Professor Kular will be enlightening us about the subject of bhakti in brief. Thank you, Professor Kular.
Thank you, Professor Kalidas ji. Actually, I mean, he's prefixed it with professor. I am no professor, but yeah, I have a passionate interest in philosophy. Yeah, I'll because we are running out of time, so I'll be very brief. And I think don't need to mention the social and the cultural renaissance which accompanied the Bhakti movement. There was this upsurge of Bhakti literature, and as Professor Alvar put it so beautifully, I think it is a unifying force. It has always been one. So whether you talk of the Tamil, Nayanars and Alvars, or you go right to the north to Guru Nanak and the Sikh, tenets, or the east, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or the west, the Marathi saint poet Ramdev Tukaram. It's always been unifying, but I think I'll just very briefly touch on 2-3 things. What is the philosophic notion of bhakti? I don't know, I had spoken about it earlier, so pardon me, Alvar Saab, but it may be a repetition for him, but just one, what is the philosophic notion of bhakti? What does it mean? I mean, we all know that it is devotion to God, but there must be a thinking behind it as well. So I think, as I often say, one of my mentors, Professor Houston Smith, who wrote a bestseller called Religions of Man, way back in the 80s, he used to say that bhakti and gyan are two aspects in which you one is a path in which you would like to kind of become the sugar, in the milk. But one is a part where you would like to stay away and drink the milk and taste that sugar. So bhakti is that taste of sugar, which we all perhaps at times all the great saint poets have lured us into. But I think what does it affirm? To me, the philosophic notion behind bhakti is that it is a great affirmation of the word, the physical world in which we live in, and it's an affirmation of existence. It is an affirmation of the physical word, the immanence of God, as we call it. So while God may be transcendent for the Bhakti poets, but he is immanent as well, because the very structure of the physical world is the body of God itself. November 16th was World Philosophy Day. There was a question which was raised: does philosophy, or even bhakti for that matter, does it have any value in the modern world? I mean, where you are governed and circumscribed by science, artificial intelligence now. So does it have any value? And the answer, of course, to a discerning mind should be that philosophy or philosophic wisdom helps us to question, thinking the issues of the day. The same way, I think bhakti in itself, while it was an adoration of God at one level, it was also raising pertinent questions, as I think we all know, about caste and class. I think this affirmation which the bhakti poets laid the philosophical basis as of bhakti. I think that to me seems more important, than their literature, of course, we all read in all languages and across India. But I think for example, Ramanuja, from where Alwar Saab comes, the Vaishnav lineage to which he belongs. So I think Ramanuja himself or Madhavacharya, the Vishishta Advait and the Dvait philosophy, perhaps not only counter the Advait of Shankara, but also I think in more ways than one, counter the fact that this existence itself is Maya, which perhaps I think Bhakti teaches us that it is not. So I think in this affirmation, I find that to be the most fascinating aspect of the Bhakti movement, of Bhakti literature, and even of philosophy as such. Hegel used to say that once the word of ideas is revolutionized, reality cannot resist. So I think the kind of ideas which were brought forth by Bhakti literature, they've not only survived, they've pervaded, and I think they've brought us to a point where socially we may not have been able to do that as much, but I think it has been the impulse to critical thinking, and it has also been the impulse, I think, for just action, because all philosophy must lead to just action. It's not about ideas only. I think if you cannot translate them into the world we live in, there is no point of it. So I think from great ideas to just action, I think that is how I see philosophy, that is how I see Bhakti. I cannot take more time than that, but yeah, I think that is where I found, just to place before you the philosophic notion of what Bhakti actually is. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me quote from a few lines from Chandogya Upanishad. I'll tell you why I'm doing this. The lines run like that. I'm quoting from a book edited by W.B. Yeats and Sri Purohit Swami, 10 Principal Upanishads. But the lines are from Chandogya Upanishads. And there the body, this is how the body is described, human body. In this body, in this town of the spirit, there is a little house shaped like a lotus. And in that little house, there is a space. One should know what is there. What is there? And why is it so important? There is as much within that little space, within the heart, as in the whole world. Heaven, earth, winds, fire, sun, moon, lightning, stars, whatever is and whatever is not, everything is there. So, if you open your eyes, there is a whole cosmic realm. If you close your eyes, there is again a whole Brahmanda, whole cosmic world again. Now, did the Bhakti poets in any way, they rejected the ritualistic practices of the Upanishad Vedas, but they never went against the essential philosophy of the Vedas or the Upanishads. If you look at the whole Gita, Sri Krishna is showing this whole Vishwarupa to Arjuna, and that is all within. So, we'd like to listen from Professor Binayak Bandyopadhyay to what extent the Bhakti poets, to what extent they embraced the Upanishadic philosophy or the Vedic philosophy without following the ritualistic practices associated with it at one time. And sometimes as students of literature, Emerson was talking about the soul and oversoul, the world within and the world outside. you know, can we see some parallels in Western literature? But it is up to Professor Bandyopadhyay to enlighten. Professor Bandyopadhyay.
Namaste. I am very grateful to SOA University to give me a chance to present myself in this august literary My heartfelt gratitude to SOA University to give me a chance, who have given me a chance to present myself in this SOA Literary Festival. Our time is short and very few people are listening us. We have so many stalwarts in the stage, Alawarji, Kullarji, Kalidas Mishra ji and Mohanta ji. So I come with fully prepared with 7-8 pages writing on Bhakti literature and what I think about it. And I think Bhakti literature and what I think about it. But I think the time is not very ripe for that. So I think the time is not very ripe for that. So what I would rather want to concentrate, has Bhakti literature finished with the Middle Ages? Or is Bhakti literature, I am basically a poet and novelist, so the way I feel, is Bhakti literature still continuing? Isn't Tulsidas or Kabir not residing inside me? I wrote a poem a few years back, which was published in Desh, you have heard of a Bengali magazine, in Bengali. The spark of the poem was that I had given an interview and they asked me which was your favorite city. And I said about Puri and they said, tell something spectacular. And I said, San Francisco. I had gone to Iowa, I stayed there. But when I came back home, I was feeling so uneasy. Why did I do that? Why did I do that? From there, the poem arose. The name of the poem is Puri. I am reading the English version. I think this is my way of dealing with Bhakti in my time. Puri. Lord Jagannath accosted me on the road. At first, I mistook him for the dark, as it was eventide. But the tears of a dark-skinned god are no different from that of the fair-hued. And so, at one point, I realized that he was weeping. Snub-nosed, thick-lipped, he appeared before my eyes, tears streaming down his cheeks, casting the whole world in gloom. Has there been an earthquake, a tsunami, an explosion somewhere? Have many persons died? As I waited for an answer, it dawned on me why. San Francisco, I had blurred out in my interview when asked what my favorite city was. Why really had I said that? Why cloak the truth by naming the Pacific shores? Why not admit that it was Puri and Puri alone that I held most beloved in my heart? Puri, where I could sit out the whole night watching the waves die and be reborn, or spend entire afternoons foraging for seashells on the beach, where whether or not I visited the temple in the morning, I could sit in the courtyard at noon, devouring the consecrated food, and where throughout the day I could greet and be greeted by friend or stranger alike. Joy Jagannath. The finger pointed at me took me back some 8 or 10 years, when by tying a ribbon, I had made a vow, praying for my father's long life. And since you two had come into my life, I had tied another in the hope that you would stay. But though the colors of those ribbons have long faded in my mind, I can't forget that I slipped away into the great void that very year. or that soon after you moved on to another relationship, while just like the receding sea, I kept retreating from Puri, love yielding to misgivings, aggrievement ousting the claims of kinship, and so in the interview I had blurted out. The bullet once fired cannot be reversed. The word once spoken cannot be taken back. Just as Sri Chaitanya never returned, but kneeling like Androcles in this colosseum of sand and sea, I realized then that the past confronting me was really that grateful lion from whose paw I had once plucked the festering thorn. Lion or Narasingh, Shingho or Narasingho, that was the lion or Narsingh, the lion God within, the petty mind or the vast consciousness that, like the diminutive Vamana, dwarfs the three worlds, who measure for measure had with Jagannath's heart offset mine. The young lifeguards prancing in the enfolding alabaster surf were then turning into stars. A scent of jasmine wafted from the pyres of the coastal cremation ground, and reunion's unbearable fervor drove me to wipe off the tears streaming from his eyes, where the Mahanadi and the Mississippi had melded. And I'm just ending. And though the story ended here, the poem was not yet complete. So before melting into the night, Jagannath bid me to visit Puri for the forthcoming chariot feast. And with the voice of 1,000 birds at sundown, Jagannath, Lord of the universe, confessed, I have no hands. No one has a hand in whatever happens now or in the past or in what will come to be. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have one more speaker who has joined, Mr. Vishnupada Sethi. And he has worked extensively on Bhima Bhoi and Mahima Dharma. You know, if you read Bhima Bhoi, you shall find in Stuti Chintamani, in Bhajan Mala, he is talking about, if you are asking words, there is this familiar expression, Hrudaya Chintivi. Very often, when you are talking about the whole question of thinking, we say that thinking belongs to the head, feeling belongs to the heart. But he says that I shall think through my heart. That is something unique. And coming, in 19th century, that is, T.S. Eliot was talking about unified sensibility, union of thought and emotion, the intellect and emotion, the head and the heart. So Bhima Bhoi is telling, Hudaya Chintibi. But again, as I was telling you, 19th century was very much, second half of 19th century, tumultuous time. The famine of 1866, coming of Mahima, and there is some Jagannath temple, and so many things. And Bhima Bhoi was, emerging at a crucial period in human history, and the sort of apocalyptic tenor of his writing would suggest as if he meant, when he was talking about prophecy, he was talking about history, prophecy as history. Now we have an expert and a sort of enthusiastic reader, very hearty reader of Bhima Bhoi and Mahima Dharma, Mr. Vishnupada Sethi, and we'll listen to him to what extent the coming of the Mahima Gosai, coming of Bhima Bhoi, in a way, was it a departure from the Bhakti tradition, or was it a continuation of the Bhakti tradition to what extent Bhima Bhoi is different from the earlier Panchasakha tradition. Professor Mr. Vishnupada Sethi, he is very much there with us, and we shall listen to him. Mr.
Thank you very much. I thank the organizer for having given an opportunity to me to speak on this occasion. In the context of Bhakti literature of India, the topic given to me is on the Mahima literature, Mahima Sahitya of Odisha. As I was coming to attend this, I was pleasantly surprised to see that a 3 days conference was being held in the auditorium nearby, and it was basically focused on Mahima cult. So I spent more time there, so I was delayed. I beg my apology for coming late. As Sri Mishra talked about the situation in 19th century. 19th century was a dark period in the history of India, and more so for the state of Odisha. Obviously, women had no rights. The biggest challenge for the humanity was casteism. People had no access to, we believe that when we are discarded in the society, we go before the Lord and pray. The casteism was in so much of practice that even people had no recourse to the God. They couldn't go to the temple and, pray. The society was highly inequitable, and feudalism was ruling roost. So that is why we say not only religious discrimination was there, but the society was ridden with divisive tendencies, casteism, selfishness, savagery. And at that point of time, the poverty also was at its peak. In the context of Odisha, in the year 1966, we had the Great Famine. That is, we call it Naunka Durvika, or the Great Bengal Famine. And all of us know that 1/3 population of this area, this region, they perished for the lack of food. And that continued for, the famine was not only confined to 1 year. The famine period and the recovery must have taken about 5 to 10 years. And at that time, the saint poet Bhima Bhoi was only 16 years old. And the situation, he was in the western part of Odisha. And he wrote a poem, and the stanza is now recited very often. Praninka arata dukha apramita dekhu dekhu keba sahu mo jibana pache narke padithao jagata udaro. So this stanza he recited when he was barely 16 years old. So he was truly the gem of Indian literature. And the situation was so bad that, though he was a devotee of Mahima Gosai, he was propagating the Agya, what is called Guru Agya, that, he was mandated to take Guru Agya in form of writing poetry, singing bhajans, and, making the religion popular. But internally he was so much at pains that he wrote a poem, and that became very popular. Though I'm basically an administrator, I work for the government. Incidentally, I was posted at a place called Sonpur, where the Samadhi Pitha of Saint Poet Bhima Bhoi is located. When I joined the district, I was pleasantly surprised by number of ruins. One was the ruin of a palace, and that belonged to a 400-year-old dynasty, Chauhan dynasty of Sonpur. The king was poisoned by the people who were working for him. He was poisoned and he died, and his children, his wife left for Rajasthan, and it was abandoned. And soon after the king left the place, it was all plundered. It had one of the finest library. All the books were manuscript books. Everything that the palace had was plundered. And when I visited, I thought that something could be done to restore the palace to the old glory and could be converted to a hotel. But because of the litigation relating to land was there, I gave up and it was not possible. And today, the palace is no more there. This is gone. There was another ruin that I was taken to was the Samadhi Pitha of Bhima Bhoi. There was a grand temple constructed soon after the death of Bhima Bhoi in the year 1895 through the donation of the disciple. And that was also in some kind of ruins. So nobody was taking care of. When Bhima Bhoi was alive, there was no royal patronage. Like many of the poets, the celebrated poet of Odisha, though who have a name and fame, they had all royal patronage. Bhima Bhoi incidentally had no patronage, and after his death, obviously there was no patronage, and everything was done by the disciple. So there was no upkeep, maintenance of the temple, and the temples also had growth of vegetation. The temple also had fractures, and all other monuments, small monuments, because Bhima Bhoi's disciples, his spiritual consort, his children, all of them had small samadhi. All of them were in ruins, and there was all these sadhus. But in contrast to the palace, there are about hundreds of sadhus who are living in the huts surrounding the main temple. They are carrying on the tradition of worship of Paduka, of the foot, what we call as Paduka, or the footwear of Bhima Bhoi, and they had maintained the tradition for 100 years, 1895, and I'm talking about the year 2000. For 100 years, they were carrying on the tradition of worship of Bhima Bhoi, and there was a big cowshed. And we started restoration. Today, when I was sitting in the conference, I was pleasantly surprised that there was a time when Odisha had forgotten Bhima Bhoi. And today, the whole world is talking about Bhima Bhoi. The Honorable President, took the name of Bhima Bhoi, his poetry. And you see, the word of the saint. What I wanted to say is that the words of the saint, the Bhakti literature was just not a piece of literature that was some poetry, but it was the voice that came from within, what Mr. Mishra said. It was the voice of the heart, voice of the soul. And what he wrote today is now getting glorified. And as we march ahead, I think his messages, his words, his poetry would be talked about, it will be listened, it will be translated to many languages. There are chairs in various universities. There are chairs in Odisha University and central universities. Today, Bhima Bhoi has reached United Nations. So what I wanted to say is that what is based on truth will always have its triumph. And Bhima Bhoi has taken his messages of his guru and his religion to the highest possible level. Truly, Bhima Bhoi was born to spread Mahima religion, and the originator of this religion is Mahima Goswami, and nobody knows when he was born. In fact, Bhima Bhoi in his poetry has said that he was never born. There is a poem where Bhima Bhoi has said, Arupa Purusa Rupabanta Hoile Brahmandaku Oile Jaro Nahi Rupakaya Ki Lagiba Maya Nuhanti Se Joni ଜନମୁ ଜାତ ପାଦ ପାଣି ନାହିଁ ତାଙ୍କୁ ଧରିବ କିଏ ଏମନ୍ତ ବ୍ରହ୍ମ ସ୍ୱରୂପ ଦେଖା ନ ଯାଏ. So the people who believe in Mahima religion, they believe that Mahima Swami was never born, he just arrived, and though the death has been recorded in the year 1876, but people believe, or Bhima Bhoi himself wrote, that he was never born, he just appeared. Many scholars consider Mahima Dharma as an offshoot of Buddhism, Jainism, Vaishnavism. It is worth mentioning that a stray resemblance cannot make it the shadow of other religion. Mahima Swami Dharma rested on indigenous foundations and had nothing to do with external forces. It is completely an Odishan religion. In essence, it is for mankind and of mankind. Bhima Bhoi expounded the theory of one God, one religion, and one society. The keynote of his poetry is compassion and commitment, and a strong element of human integration. The entire world of Mahima devotees believes in one God, which is Alik, you cannot describe, indescribable. Niranjan, which is pure. Anakara, formless. And the Supreme Being is inexpressible. Unseen one without any beginning or an end. He is Sunyadahi, and all encompassing void is his body. In his poetic stanza, he writes, Rupa rekha nahi hai, Sunyadahi, acha ude ahi. Bhima Bhoi professes that he is immanent. He also says, Sthabaru jangama kitaru patanga chahi dele anusari sakala ghatare puri samanare nahi bada sana kehi. When he was protesting about casteism, the unequal treatment of women, he wanted to say that God is filled up everywhere. He fills up everything. It is whether it is from the immovable to movable, in worms and in insects, whatever you see, he uniformly pervades all. No one is greater, no one is less. Bhima Bhoi also, in his poetry, if you see that he, like in Christianity, there is a word called father, he also talks about father. And he says that I don't belong to this place, I have come from somewhere. He says, Ghara dwara ishta bandhu varga chhadi asi mohara pitara panchila jagate khela karu achi basi. So, he says, the ultimate entity is Father, and on several contexts he has spoken him as the creation of his Father. The only distinction worth the name, says Bhima Bhoi, is between male and female. There is no distinction caste or race. He says the God has only created two distinctions. One is male, another is female. And other distinctions are basically arbitrary and should be abandoned. He says, Sthiri Purus Duhinku Gadi Achi Jodiye Sorupa Dekha Ditya Jatiru Tini Jati Nahi Sujane Kare Vivaka. And he championed the causes of women. In fact, probably this is the first religion in 19th century wherein he allowed the entry of women. In fact, he had 4 women who were very closely associated with him. And for the first time in Mahima religion, he allowed the women to take Diksha. And probably it was a kind of a revolution. That is why that remained the religion of the lower caste. He states that we continue to live in Kali Yuga unless the female folk take the lead in Brahma Jnana and Brahma Bhakti. He says, Ninda Garbha Mana Narahiva Tana Karu Thiva Sama Bhava पुरुषंकु स्त्री ज्ञान शिखाइले सत्य जुग लेउटिबो. Well, okay. So the point is that the difference between other poets and him was that he was rooted in the soil. He was really upset with the suffering of the people because of the material wants. But he also wanted that people should also do something for the spiritual void. In fact, in his prayers, he would always pray and implore the God, and he would cry. In one of the poems, he says, Aseso Brahmanda dubi jebe jibo, kahire rahibi muhi, mano chana chana, heuchi uchana, epinda Brahmanda pai. Ejana jata hata hoigale, kahi prachari muhi, एणु करी सिना प्रभु श्रीछामु को नीति जनान करई ब्रह्मांड निमंते करो जोड़ी माथे पड़ी श्री गुरुंक पादे कहे भीम भाई अष्ट शत पदे नेत्रु लुह पछी कांदे. So he was always crying for the mankind, for the welfare of this universe, and for the emancipation of everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bishnupad Sadi. Before we sum it up, I must mention this. Mr. Bishnupad Sadi, who was the collector of Sonpur, actually, he renovated the Mohima Ashram there at Khaliapali, Bhima Bhoi's Ashram. And he did a lot of things. There was no passage to Khaliapali. Actually, he exercised his power, renovated the place, and saw to it that the place is well connected. And that is, he will not say about himself. But just to sum it up, just to begin with, when we are discussing bhakti, as Professor Alwar started it, bhakti literature unified people. It was never a divisive force. And bhakti literature put emphasis on the common language of man, not on the elitist language, be it Sanskrit or some other language. Bhakti literature emphasized that it is the common people from the lower ranks of the society, who must get a voice. It is writing from below. And bhakti literature saw to it that whether you are a believer in God with a form or without a form, you don't have to follow the ritualistic practices. It is not always. You may do that, but it is not mandatory. And it saw to it that there is a God within, and you must, try to have your contact with the divine that resides from within. And in a way, it was a sort of reformist kind of thing on the part of the Bhakti poets, to bring in women to the fold. Bhima Bhoi actually deviated. Actually, he was not liked when he saw to it that the women should be initiated into the Mahima cult. And even the Gruhis, family people, actually earlier it was a norm that if you are married, you don't have a space. But married people, married women, they were also allowed to be initiated into the Mahima cult. So 19th century literature with Bhima Bhoi in mind, or the Bhakti poets from different parts of India, it contributed a lot to Indian literature. And I must thank the panelists, Professor Alwar, Professor Pranav Kular, Professor Pradeep Jyoti Mahanta, Professor Binayak Bandhopadhyay, and Mr. Bishnupad Sethi for their enlightening views. And I must thank the distinguished audience here, Professor Yashodhara Mishra is there, Mr. Rabi Shwai is there, Basudev Nani is there, Mona Lisa Jana Madam is there, Professor Sahu is there, and so many persons. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for staying for so long to listen to us. Thank you.
I thank all the panelists and our chairperson for a memorable session. The Bhakti literature, the devotion, the dedication and the determination to the work has a huge impact to the society. To the love, to the surrender, to the Almighty and to the God has a huge impact to each and every one of us where we are standing and do. I thank our chairperson, Shri Kalidas Mishra ji, panelist M.A. Alvar ji, our panelist Pranav Khular ji, Pradeep Jyoti Mahant ji, Binayak Banopadhyay ji, Vishnupadip Sethi ji. I thank everyone with all the audience for cheering out and having the session in the occasion of this literary festival 2K23 in the Soha University. Thank you everyone. I, Akanksha Das Goswami, sign off.